It's amazing that just a little while ago, there was a book that came out written by Malcolm Gladwell, made a tremendous impact. And the name of the book was Blech. And he said that invariably, your first gut feeling is what you should be following. And then anecdotally, he gave a great many examples, which led people to think that my first thought is right. Now, I could have written a book with about 1,000, if not 100,000 more anecdotal experiences of people who followed their first inclination, an inclination that was rooted in a momentary passion, an inclination that was rooted in an emotion, an inclination that was rooted not in what actually makes us human. As Maimonides said, when God tells us he created man in his image, we don't look like God. God doesn't have a body. What does that mean? God gave us intelligence, and intelligence requires thought. Thought requires taking time out to evaluate. Going with your gut sounds good. Most often it leads to tragic mistakes. What people have to do is to carefully analyze. And just as we discussed a moment ago, when you run after the herd, you've abdicated. When you run after your first opinion, you're letting emotion sway you. The only time you can perhaps let emotion sway you is if you want to follow your heart and give a lot of charity. But in terms of decision making by definition is rooted in intelligence. Give up your intelligence, you're going to make mistakes. Therefore, think. And then when you finish thinking, think again. Most important decision you have to make is decisions that represent you and your life. Money is an additional aspect of your life. Money is paper until you do something with it. What you do with the money is the decision that people don't even think about when they dedicate their lives to making money. It is fascinating that I spoke to MBA students at Drew University, and I asked them, if I were to give you $50 million, what would you do with it? And someone raised their hand, he says, I would invest it. And I said, that's interesting. So all you're telling me that you would do with it is try to make more. What if I gave you $500 million? Well, I'd invest it too. But what do you want to bottom line do with it? And so I'm saying, you have to ultimately think of what you want to accomplish with your life rather than accumulate. And that's why every aspect of your life requires decision making. What are the most important areas? What do you want to do with your life? Who do you want to marry? How is it that so many people mess up that decision that more than 50% of marriages end in divorce? It means that they didn't think it through properly or they made a mistake. Now, what am I going to do for a living? For a living, you should ask, what do I want to do for a life? Not what I want to do for a living. What do you want your life to be? Today, when you say, who are you? They identify themselves by their job. Why don't you identify yourself with what you want to do as a person to leave over when you're finished? They don't put shoemaker or banker on a tombstone. They put beloved this or beloved that. The memories that you accumulate in the minds of others are reflections of what you have achieved. And therefore, what you've said is so important. Decision making requires that people not fall into a career, not fall into a marriage because they just happened to meet a girl or a guy and all of a sudden there was a moment of passion. Every part of life requires decision making. Decision making is a process and it requires rationality. Take a piece of paper and say pro and say con. Don't simply fall into things, because falling into things is by definition a descent and you want to rise in life.